To kind of go along with the whole what if game that we've been starting here on this channel, a lot of you have suggested ideas that have involved what would happen if somebody didn't pass away. Now, while we're going to tackle a lot of these in individual episodes, prior to doing any of that, I feel as though we should discuss 20 tragic heavy metal deaths that have occurred throughout the years. And this is one where any death that happens is tragic, so we're not attempting to really showcase one as being as more important or worthy of attention than others. And we're also not going to talk about within this series, or should I say within this video, Varg Vikernes and the death of Euronymous, or Dead, from Mayhem, considering we just talked about that in the most recent episode of What If. And I'm also not going to talk about John from Dissection, considering that was technically a suicide. Still a very sad occurrence, but at the same time, his beliefs and his overall ideology was what made him to make that decision. So let's speak a little bit about these, and do so a little bit quickly, and remember them all in the process. Firstly, we have Quorthon from Bathory, who died from heart failure. He was extremely instrumental with Viking metal, with black metal, with various styles of extreme metal, and was really starting to get the recognition that he deserved for his influence. So may he rest in peace. We also have Valfur from Winder, who was walking to see his parents and was unfortunately trapped in a snowstorm on a path between his home and theirs, and ended up freezing to death and was discovered 3 days later. It's definitely one where Winder is a band that should really be explored by many individuals. They're a fantastic group, and he was their real driving force, though the rest of the band now is Vreed. So if you like Vreed, you will enjoy Winder. If you like Winder, then you will no doubt enjoy Vreed. Next we have Misko from Nazem, who was in the Indian Ocean earthquake in 2004. And this death of a member of one of the godfathers of grindcore really showcases just how fragile life can be, and just how quickly that it can be erased. That one world tragedy is going to really affect a number of individuals, including those that are a member of bands either that are important figures. Whenever tragedy strikes, nobody is exempt. We also have to talk about the people that have been listening to maybe some new metal or some metalcore or deathcore, these bands that perhaps make me feel a little bit old considering their youth, but these are individuals that are already starting to experience that pull and tug of their favorite musicians dying. And we're talking individuals like Paul Gray or The Rev, Dave Williams from Drowning Pool. Man, he was on their first album, and then he was dead on the first tour, and it was a huge tragedy. It was something where many new metal fans had to experience death for the first time, unless they were around for whenever the lead singer from Snot had died. Mitch Lucker from Suicide Silence, of course, is a very recent one, but the most recent of all, of course, being Wayne Static, which was one that, even though Static X may not have been the big-sized band that it was in the latter portions of the 90s with albums such as Wisconsin Death Trip, it was still a really sad day, and really marked just a sad day in history, considering he was such an easy-to-identify singer and songwriter, and was still beloved by a lot of individuals. You have to also talk about Peter Steele in that regard as well, considering Typo Negative was a band that was enjoyed by just millions of people. There's a lot of fans of this group. They really crossed over well, they sold well all the time, and there's still a huge demand for their work today. And Pete's death was just a monumental tragedy for a lot of individuals. I remember speaking to friends who were literally in tears whenever the news was delivered to them. In some cases, I was the one that had to give them that news, and then had to console them, which was not an easy task to do, considering they are a very important, Typo Negative was very important to them. And it's almost similar to whenever I found out that Lane Staley was dead. It's not an inclusion in this list, but it's very similar to that, where it was a day of mourning for me as well. But then you have to talk about, we're talking about a lot of big names, names that people know, but what about those that nobody knows? What about bands such as Wormrot and Chaotica that were just involved in that horrific accident earlier this year, and worse off, they had to deal, their families, people that were mourning had to deal with the fact that people were being ignorant and were being extremely bigoted, really, should I say, in the comments. It was just insane to see how individuals attached heavy metal with Satanism and immediately damned these individuals and almost was thankful that they were in this accident, which is just completely and totally wrong. I wouldn't necessarily walk up whenever Lady Gaga dies and say, Lady Gaga's dead, thank fucking God. Not my style. Might think it, but still recognize her as an individual. It's the same as people that say, hey, Amy Winehouse has been sober for 5 years, congratulations. It's kind of similar to that as well. All life is sacred. All life has meaning, and even if it's somebody that doesn't seem to be doing what you like with their life, they are important. And this tragedy really showcased how heavy metal fans can come together, because after this happened, the community really responded as a whole and unified a little bit, which showcases that heavy metal is like a family, and that is an important thing to remember. Speaking of heavy metal being a family, the family came together back in 2010 and mourned the loss of a very important friend and a very important musician, that being Ronnie James Dio. Many people wonder why Dio gets the supreme credit that he does. It's because he's one of the true forefathers of this genre. Not to mention, he showcased that what many people consider to be the socially acceptable ideas of heavy metal, he proved those to be completely and totally untrue by being one of the kindest men on the planet, the biggest little men in metal. That was one of the nicknames that he was given. His voice resonated with millions, and even though he obviously didn't coin the horns, he was the one that really brought it to become a symbolic thing here for heavy metal fans and metal in general. So it was almost literally watching the iconic hand gesture die right alongside of it, even though it is still used principally in his memory. In fact, it's being used now more than ever before. It's being used by folks that aren't even listening to heavy metal music as kind of a cool tribute. Many people consider that to be disrespectful. Here's a relevant and ridiculous for you. It's extremely relevant, because even if they don't mean it to be respectful toward Ronnie James Dio, just accept it as such and smile a little bit. Think about Dio as opposed to thinking about the person who's behind the hand that's delivering the motion. Jeff Hanneman, of course, was a tragedy that we had to, that happened a couple of years ago. Chuck Schuldiner. These individuals that died based off of medical conditions similar to Ronnie James Dio, but Chuck, of course, having cancer, and Jeff based around cirrhosis, and then he was, of course, had been bitten by a spider about a year or so before that, and just deteriorated his body. These tragedies once again showcase just how human that we all are, and showcase that disease does not spare anybody. It's something that can happen to just about anybody, and for all of the great stories that we do hear about those who pull through, there are unfortunately moments where that isn't what happens, and I think a lot of people experienced and felt that the same year that Jeff Hanneman died, considering the unfortunate demise of Chai Cheng from the Deftones, which was extremely sad by its own right, considering he had showcased improvement. He had showcased and looked like he was going to potentially be okay, only to have that taken away. Speaking of people that were taken away, should I say, this is an emotional topic. Justin Lowe. Just this year, just here in 2015, the Justin Lowe of After the Burial, who went missing 1 month after he seemed to have just a mental breakdown. And of course, after he was missing, people already started to fear that he was going to end up dead, and that is exactly what happened. Justin is an example to many folks that we tend to take some things lightly. We tend to take some things as either maybe just their base value, either that or as potential comedy. You know, we look at people that are either conspiracy theorists or who are going through a rough time, and we just simply say to them, hey man, buck up, or hey man, shake it off. Quoting Taylor Swift. It's not that easy. It's not something that's that easy for everybody. while there is a time and place where we do need to sort of spread our wings a little bit and shake some of the simple stuff off of our shoulders, whenever something this major goes down, it's something where you just hope for the best for these individuals and pray to God, or, you know, Allah, or Buddha, whoever. You just hope the hell they get the help that they need, and that help is able to give them some aid. Some individuals end up troubled, others, it just happens. It's something that's completely and totally unexplainable at times, and Justin really just showed a switch. Just seemed like it was flipped, and you just never know. And may he rest in peace. Hopefully, this has brought some peace to Justin. Finally, it goes without saying, the big names that are out there, the people that are always mentioned in these types of things, Cliff Burton and Randy Rhodes and Dimebag Darrell. These are folks that were victim to tragic accidents. Cliff Burton, of course, was a bus accident that many people now make light of and say that they wish that Lars had taken his place in bed, and then Lars had been that's not the way to go. People actually have suggested that for a what-if game. If I make that episode, I can guarantee you one thing: you're not going to like what happens. You're not going to like the episode. I can almost guarantee you that, because you may actually think that it's going to mean something, but it probably won't. It'll actually probably be worse than what you're thinking in your brains. Randy Rhodes, of course, was based around a plane accident. Now, this is one that I will tackle, and this is one that I plan to be very detailed about, considering I feel that this has the potential to really shake up a lot of different things. His death was exceptionally tragic, not just based around the fact that he was in Ozzy Osbourne's band, but based around the fact that he was a phenomenal talent who was very young. And then Dimebag Darrell, we of course tackled in the very first episode of the What If game. What if he had not been shot in 2004? But unfortunately, he was. Unfortunately, Nathan Gale did get his job done, the mission that he had given to himself. And Metal Forever lost a friend. Metal Forever was extremely angry. And Metal Forever has opted to persevere. That's the one thing that can be stated. In the absence of all of these individuals, Metal has continued to persevere, has continued to foster new stars, and it's continuing to be a force that cannot be killed. Even though these individuals' lives have ended, heavy metal has not. It will not. So before we end this journey, let's just take a couple of moments and have some silence for our departed friends. And may they all rest in peace.